this time I would like to ask Gol Kalev, and also Gol Kalev is the author of Judaism 3.0 and a journalist with the Jerusalem Post.
Okay. Hello everybody, welcome to Jerusalem for those who are visiting. Julie, the main premise of the book, very briefly, is that it's rather simple. I'm arguing that we are going through a historic transformation of Judaism, and Zionism is becoming its anchor. I'm showing how both Jews and non-Jews now relate to Judaism primarily through the prism of Zionism, whether it's in the positive or in the negative, and increasingly in the negative. Quite simply, Zionism has become the most relevant aspect of Judaism, the aspect that triggers emotions and passions and agreements and disagreements, relevancy. I don't think a lot of American Jews sitting around the kitchen table today talk about the Bible or religious issues or about the Holocaust anymore because the generations have passed. They talk about Israel, whether it's in support or criticism. And in a sense, it's a very natural process. We as Jews were here, Judaism 1.0, anchored in the physical presence here in Judea and in Jerusalem and in the temple. We were deported, we were kicked out. Judaism transformed into Judaism 2.0, anchored in the religious aspect on the inside and the complete insularity on the outside. And both of those have eroded, but at the same time, the state of Israel is reestablished. And I'm arguing that after 80 years, I'm showing how it has become the main conduit and the national aspect of Judaism. Zionism has become the main conduit into Judaism. But this book is not just a theoretical discussion about the state of Judaism, as important as it is. The book comes at a time when Judaism is under assault. And Judaism is under assault through the port of Zionism. Now, the fact that Judaism is being attacked is not surprising because in our long history, it happens every few centuries. Every few centuries, there's a large-scale assault at Judaism. What changes is the entry point and the aspect of Judaism through which it is being assaulted. And it's always the most relevant aspect of Judaism at that time, and now it is Zionism. There's a misperception, perhaps, that the world's oldest conflict is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That's not true. It's only been around for a century. It's maybe the most over-conflicticized conflict to the tune of billions of euros that help nurture and perpetuate the conflict. But to be blunt, the oldest conflict in the world is the Israeli-European conflict. And we just marked this week its inception in the holiday of Hanukkah. We are friends, and we love Europeans, and Europeans love us. And because of that friendship, and which is unique to the history of time that now we can be blunt and honest and say that there's been a conflict that have taken the different aspect depending on the evolving nature of Judaism and of Europe, whether it was an assault that was based on the spiritual aspect, like we marked in Hanukkah, whether it's physical, when the Jews for 2,000 years were mostly in Europe and abused and attacked continuously, whether it's political that we see right now. And it's not just Europe, because for most of those 2,300 years, Europe dominated the world. Over the last century or so, there's been a shift of power, and with it, so is the assault on Zionism and Israel bashing, or assault on Judaism through Zionism and Israel bashing have gone to elsewhere, including to the United States, as was discussed here, on college campuses at first, and then elsewhere in various circles. The assault is not, the conflict goes in one direction. And it's important to recognize this, and it has ups and downs, and there's years, sometimes centuries of peace and containment. We remember fondly the golden age in Spain in the 8th, 9th, 10th century, when Jews flourished, even though it was under Muslim rule. And we remember the 80 years at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th centuries where Jews did really well in Europe. There was emancipation, we were giving rights, but then came the Holocaust. And over the last 80 years, Jews have been living, there's not been a large-scale assault on any aspect of Judaism, but now there is. That's why I think Herzl, which was the visionary of the Jewish state that our incoming prime minister calls our modern Moses, identified that such European opposition to Judaism is permanent and chronic, and therefore what is needed is not public diplomacy because it's ineffective, because dogmatic minds cannot change. What's needed is a paradigm shift, and that was the Jewish state. I'm arguing that today we are in a similar circumstances when it comes to Israel bashing and anti-Zionism. It has become dogmatic. You can write, as many articles as we want and advocate, but it's hard to change dogmatic minds. And therefore, what I'm arguing is that what's needed is, again, a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is Judaism 3.0. The recognition that Zionism has become the anchor of Judaism, because that changes the equation. Anti-Israel, anti-Judaism, Israel bashing becomes Jew bashing, and anti-Zionism, it makes it clear that is anti-Judaism. The Israel basher has to stay in Judaism 2.0, in the notion that Judaism is merely a religion, and therefore the opposition to Zionism is not anti-Semitism, and is not anti-Judaism or of any sorts. The recognition that we're in Judaism 3.0 sort of robs that entry points. But we have an asset in our current defense against the assault on Judaism, and that is that for the first time in history, it is no longer popular to be a Jew hater. Being anti-Zionist is a rite of passage in certain circles. Being anti-Judaism can get you fired. So once again, we create that equation. Once we recognize that Judaism has transformed and Zionism is its anchor, then we can leverage that asset. I just end, and we'll have the conversation on a positive note, and I'm very honored to be here with Gil Troy, who's not only one of the most notable professors on Zionism and on American history, but also had just put out a 3-volume book set on Herzl, with the writings of Herzl, with an insightful introduction. One of the things that Herzl recognized is that the Jewish state will exist not because of the goodwill of the world, but it will exist because it will produce innovations that will advance humanities in unimaginable ways. And therefore, the Jewish state will become the necessity of humanity. Herzl was an early prototype of the concept of peace through strength with Europe. And this is exactly what's happening right now. We have in Israel, as we've, I think, discussed in one of the previous years, innovations that have advanced humanity. And therefore, the anti-Zionism, or the threat of anti-Zionism is not just a threat to Judaism, it is a threat to humanity. Anti-Zionism is anti-humanity. And I'm hoping that the people who oppose us can follow the lead of our Arab friends, as was just discussed, who are forging with us accords such as the Abraham Accords and corporations, and rather than oppose the Zionism and the Jewish state, benefit from the crisp light that is emanating out of Zion. Thank you.